Hello and welcome to Remote Island Reels, where I ask other YouTubers to imagine they've been stranded on a desert island with 5 of their favourite movies, 1 television show, and 1 album. This episode features ZimoNitrome, who makes many of the highly produced memes you've seen around the internet. You've made the It Is Wednesday, my dude frog videos every week for a year, I believe.
Yep, that's true.
Did the films that you watch influence the frog videos that you made, or do you just come up with it on the fly?
I probably just came up with that on the fly. I mean, I do watch films in varying frequency, really, throughout the years. But I'm, of course, inspired by, some classic movies. Like, I was really inspired by maybe some Nolan films and stuff like that for just cinematography for these frog videos. And they're kind of, like stereotypical tropes. They're out in space, there's a hero, they're in the jungle dancing. So just kind of, you take those tropes of the movies and just crank them up pretty much.
My favorite one is the Windows XP
Oh, yeah,
one.
that's a classic.
I asked you to come up with 5 of your favorite films to be washed up on a desert island with. What would you say your first film of the 5
My
is?
first film that I selected is a movie called Primer from 2004. I'm gonna say that I'm probably not as much of a film nerd, or like indie movie enjoyer. I realized myself like watching not that many films throughout the year when I start counting. And maybe I, enjoy more of the normie movies as well. Probably enjoy some popcorn bait, not all of it.
That's fine, yeah.
But this movie is like the least popcorn bait on the list, probably.
Yeah, it was made on a budget of $6,000, would you believe?
Yeah, $6,000 or $7,000, which just makes it amazing what they managed to accomplish with it. I think this movie was recommended to me by a friend named Evelyn as the most believable or like probable time traveling movie.
Yeah, I think Shane Carruth has a degree in either maths or physics.
Oh,
so he's used that to its fullest extent.
Yeah, exactly. It's about these 2 guys that they're just working on their inventions or
little startup thing.
Yeah, startup thing, and they probably work on something to reduce gravity or mass of an object, mass or weight, and then in a roundabout way they accidentally discover time travel, which is an interesting concept because the director, he talked about a lot of these inventions. They're kind of invented by accident a lot of the times. So that's the inspiration for this movie as well.
Yeah, and they did it on such a small budget and it's just a realistic film. There's a bit where they go in the box and they can only go backwards as long as they are in the box. So if they stay in the box 6 hours, they go back 6 hours.
It's shot on pretty poor digital camera, I think, and the audio is not always on top either. There's like this scene where the 2 main characters are talking by a fountain, and you can really hear the noise.
They did not revoice over that scene in post.
Yeah, I don't think they did, yeah.
And it gets quite confusing towards the end as you have multiple versions of themselves all interacting with each other. I was surprised how easy it was to follow. I've been told it was a mindfuck movie, how they've got so many versions of each other over and over and talking to each other, but I followed it quite well. And there was nothing that a quick glance of the Wikipedia plot synopsis didn't clear up.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone.
That's the thing. I thought it would be interesting because there are many theories and ways to spot the small subtleties of the plot throughout the many timelines that they create while time traveling. So, like the first hour of the movie is pretty straightforward, and then at the last 20 minutes it gets really complicated, convoluted really fast. But you can kind of follow if you just pay attention, maybe watch it twice, then you can kind of realize and see what is happening. They're not going back in time that many times, but they're kind of traveling past each other.
It's only like 4 or 5 times.
At least. They talk about the main guy, or one of the main characters, Aaron. He gets obsessed with wanting to alter the events of a party where a jealous ex brings
Yeah.
a shotgun and threatens everybody, and they don't really know how many times he had to redo that to get it exactly right.
Yeah, and then there's also the thing of, running into your past self while you try and fix that. The one gripe I have with this film is that when they're driving to do the first of many time loops to fix the timeline, they do say, "Oh, there's that guy in the car behind us. I recognize him. He's so and so," but we never actually see the guy, and it's obviously because of the low
Yeah,
budget and
it's
stuff.
really
That's
difficult to
probably
follow. Who is that character? And you really have to, have paid attention that, oh, it's one of them's girlfriend's dad who's an investor
father.
in.
Yeah,
The guy Abe, he's pretty much only together with this girl because he wants his dad or her dad to invest in their inventions. Gets access of the time machine, so that's when they realized somewhere in the future they will fuck up, and they, have to prevent this from happening.
it's kind of like it takes place in the timeline that has already been messed up because of the timeline they are making right now, which is something that's not very well explored in time travel fiction, where in time travel they live in the base reality and then they'd go back and change it. But in this one, they live in the timeline that has already been messed up by the invention that they are about to invent, which I think is a different
Yeah,
take on
in
the
a way,
matter.
it's like a mix of different time traveling movies because what they are doing has influenced things in the future that come back and haunt them. But when they go and break symmetry, as they call it, they also live in another timeline because they alter events that, would have happened but don't happen. Like early in the movie, you see that a character, Aaron, he gets a phone call, but then when he travels back in time, he gets the same
Yeah,
phone call, and he's a pretty smart guy, so he knows like, oh well, if I'm getting this phone call, then my other phone is not pinged because the cell tower just pings the first cell phone, and therefore have we broken the universe? They just go a bit and they say like, oh, nothing bad happened, so probably not.
yeah. I think it's like Back to the Future, where it makes a new timeline that they continue to
Yeah.
exist in.
Would you imagine that first person that would have gotten the phone call? There's probably a timeline where he didn't get a phone call. That's the current timeline that they're in right now. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
gets pretty. It's multiple timelines, but still, people from the future coming back and changing the past as well.
Your fourth movie.
My fourth movie that I chose was Your Name from 2016 because I had to include one anime in here to shake things up.
Are you an avid anime
I'm a
watcher?
bit of an anime enjoyer, but the thing is that I do like a lot of anime. I'm really weak for pretty art, and pretty much every frame in this
Yeah.
movie.
One of the things I noticed first off was that they'd even paid attention to the dust in the air and the heat from the heat rising up. They made background parts wobble in the
Yeah,
heat,
yeah.
which I really thought was quite
But
good.
the thing is, I also I have a bit of a difficult time watching some conventional anime because there are a bunch of tropes that I don't really like. Maybe they're in the Japanese culture, or maybe it's just these over exaggerated
Yeah.
feelings and monologues and things. So what I kind of enjoy is more not that much anime. So maybe
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I'm not an anime person either. I do watch, Studio Ghibli
hmm,
and, highbrow
yeah,
anime.
yeah, yeah.
It's never like the low tier stuff
Hmm.
that people on 4chan go crazy over and claim their waifus from. It's always the highbrow stuff. So
Yeah, for example, I do like the Studio Ghibli movies, but I feel like this one has a plot that's more relatable, maybe.
yeah, Studio Ghibli is often more fantastical.
Yeah,
Um,
and a bit
but this is
a
more.
bit weird. I remember watching a lot of the Studio Ghibli movies as a kid and finding the plot just weird, hard to follow a lot of the
Yeah.
times.
So what made Your Name different?
What made it different? It's probably that it's one of the few movies, romance fantasy. I think this is labeled as that I've actually seen. It's not a genre that I venture in too much. I think I was very drawn to the art. This movie, I think, inspired me actually when I first went into AI and machine learning. Because me and my friend, I think this movie was recommended to me by a friend called Philip, who was my classmate at the time. And we decided, or I kind of had this idea that I wanted to try to make an AI model that takes in photographs or photos and turns them into, an anime style or anime background style. So we kind of made a little model and scrapped some data and wrote a paper about this. And this was kind of before, AI art became a big thing. So it was a really cool experience at the time that I was inspired by this movie partly.
That is really impressive. You were ahead of the trail there. While everyone's making Barack Obama courtroom sketch with Xeno from Aliens, you were out here making AI anime art background generators. You've obviously seen the one by Tencent where you put in a picture of a person, it turns them into anime.
Yeah, and this was long before this, I think.
Yeah, maybe they took inspiration from you. Maybe they read your paper while they were learning how to do it.
This idea that we wanted to do it, primarily backgrounds and primarily.
And it is a good looking movie. I mean, all the backgrounds and all the scenery, that's the best part in my opinion. The plot's pretty good, the story's good, the characters fine. Yeah. The best part is just the way everything looks. That's the take home for me.
Yeah, one of the top things. And I do really like the story as well.
Not ashamed to admit, it was actually quite thrilling towards the end.
Yeah, I think so too. And as much as I hate to admit it, I always get a little emotional every time I watch this movie.
That's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah. But I'm not the big softie all the time, and I have a stoic personality to live up to.
I only watch manly anime.
Yeah, definitely. JoJo and Baki and whatever. The movie's about these two characters, two teenagers. One live in the rural area, one live in central Tokyo, and there's a sense that at least the girl who lives in the rural area really wants to go to Tokyo, and one day they wake up with switched bodies. And they keep switching like every other day until they don't. And you get this big reveal that there was a 3-year gap between them. And the girl's town is actually annihilated by a comet, I think.
Yeah.
And they need to figure out how to save her. And ultimately how to meet each other. So I think there are a lot of stuff that people can relate to. I've kind of lived in a small town, and I can kind of get the draw of wanting to go to the big city.
I'm the same, yeah.
I think everyone has had times where they would like to step out of their body and, empathize with someone else and see what it's like to live in someone else's shoes.
I've noticed a recurring thing about doors in this thing as well, and it's kind of that same thing where you enter through a doorway into someone else's world. There's loads of shots of doors closing and doors opening. Yeah,
there's a lot of symbolism with threads and weaving or sewing as well.
Yeah.
And it also has this kind of religious aspect that's interesting in I think it's called Shinto religion, if I'm not...
Yeah.
This movie is interesting. It's called Your Name, which refers to people, they get amnesia and forget each other's name, which is coincidentally what I do also when I try to refer to any of the characters in this movie.
Yeah, the girl is Mitsuha and the boy is Taki, I think.
Yeah, Taki. Yeah. Mitsuha's grandmother is old, and they kind of live in this rural village, so people are a bit more conservative and religious. Walk to this shrine. That's probably one of the more beautiful shots of the movie.
I mean, it's desktop background worthy. I mentioned that in the previous episode, but
But they make everything look like desktop background moment. They even have like the rubbles of the city as it was destroyed. It's like just chaos, but it still looks so beautiful.
What would you say your third place is? The bronze medal.
The bronze medal probably goes to 12 Angry Men, which is a movie it's the most recent movie of these ones I've actually watched. I got it recommended to me from a long childhood friend named Noah that I met like last summer or something, and had it on my watch list for a while. But I watched it more than once since then.
I mean, I go back and watch scenes from this several times because I saw it 2 years ago, and I go back and watch it a lot.
It's a bit similar to Primer in a way that it does so much with so little. There are literally 12 angry men in one room.
And all they do is talk. And then there's a second movie that takes place in your imagination where you are imagining this crime that is taking place.
Yeah.
As they describe it.
I've never really thought of it that way, but that's spot on.
Yeah, it's like 2 movies in one.
I did have some questions, previously, like do people not really, but because that's the thing that you notice at the end, all these people, they talk to each other, but at the end they actually ask for, one guy asks for the other's name. You kind of realize, you have been so mesmerized by the entire plot, you don't realize that, oh, they don't even know their names. They haven't referred to each other by names. But I guess that's a thing in American court, that you mainly refer to the jurors as like juror number 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 12, as they have here.
In 2021, I actually did jury service.
Oh.
And I did not learn anyone else's name. I'm pretty sure someone revealed their name at some point. I actually asked the bailiff, how many 12 Angry Men references do you get on like a weekly basis? And she said, yeah, we get tons of them. Like, where's Henry Fonda? Ha 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 ha. And she just has to like pretend that it's funny. I don't know what number he was, but Henry Fonda, he never actually says the boy is innocent. He just says, I'm not sure, which sort of disarms many of the other jurors. And by saying, I'm not sure if he's guilty or not, which makes them think, oh, so he's not actually thinks that he's innocent. He's just not sure.
Yeah, he's trying to prove that there's a reasonable doubt, and there's a lot of play with the words. Is it possible versus is it probable? And I guess I'm kind of weak for this movie because I'm an enjoyer of the marketplace of ideas, hashing things out.
Yeah.
So that's probably why it was compelling to me.
Do you have a favorite juror?
Other
than the main character, obviously, because everyone loves that guy.
Yeah, the main character. I remember he is number 8. Is all I remember. I'm also kind of weak for what's referred to as like the old man.
Yeah, the first one who changes his mind.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of, he's old and he's a bit fatigued at times, but he's really sharp. And he mentions at some other time, like, I've got 20/20 vision, so I know what this is like. Juror number 8, Andrew Fonda, he kind of convinces them all kind of in different ways that appeals to them why it's not very probable, maybe, or it's not clear, it's not convincing that the boy actually committed the murder in their own separate ways.
One of the best scenes is when one of the jurors goes on his little racist tirade, and instead of arguing against him, instead of entertaining his ideas, they just all get up and stand away from him and stop talking to him, and then he realizes that actually, I'm a bit of an idiot, and he goes and sits in the corner and says nothing for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a bigot. It's really interesting, and it's interesting to see like anti-bigotry or stuff like that from a movie that's from the 50s. This movie obviously doesn't have that. All these characters, they have really diverse backgrounds, but also they're all like middle-aged white men,
Yeah. I don't believe they ever actually say what race the kid is, I think it's either implied that he's black or Hispanic.
Yeah, in a way, and it's more about class as well. There's a guy, one juror that's from the slums, and they say that the kid, the accused, is also from the slums. Which was your favorite juror?
The nerd one with the glasses who was really uptight and didn't take off his jacket even though it was really hot.
Right.
I don't know what the number was, but it's because even though he was one of the last people to change his mind, he was still really analytical, and he wasn't like as prejudiced as the others. He just wanted to find the correct verdict, and he was absolutely certain based on what he had seen, how analytical and stoic he was about the whole thing.
He was the one with who didn't sweat, right?
Yeah, he's not the one who doesn't sweat. Yeah.
That point is it's a little weird too. The last one that they're like, oh, the girl, I noticed she had the marks on the side of her nose. And everyone's like, yeah, we all noticed that. That's a bit maybe fantastical.
Yeah, that just came out of nowhere. Yeah,
but he's convinced by it, and I'll let it slide for being unbelievable.
Second place, I believe. Yes, second place film. What was your second choice?
Second place is Trainspotting, a UK classic.
Yes, I only saw it a couple of years ago.
Oh, really? I probably saw it maybe like 8 years ago or something. I was introduced by a friend called Primus, I think. A childhood friend as well. Yeah, it kind of stuck with me. It's like a comedy. It's a funny movie. It also gets pretty dark. It's
it's really dark comedy. There was one bit where they go on a really bad hiking trip, and they are there for about 5 minutes, and they realize actually this is a bit crap. We need to get back on drugs.
It's a comedy about wasting your life doing heroin. I really like hiking. I don't get the the dissing of it.
Once you've tried drugs, you never go back.
Okay, yeah, I guess. his friends say like, "Oh, don't you want to go on a hike? It's like the Scottish mountains. Don't you feel nationalistic? Don't you feel pride?" It's like Scotland is shit. We're the worst of the worst. England is just wankers, but we're colonized by wankers. One of Ewan McGregor's best movies, probably.
I had to read part of the original book for Train
Mm.
Spotting in class once, and he's written it in a really thick Scottish accent, and we had to do that scene how it's written in the book.
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't read the book. I probably should at some point. In one way, I kind of want to read it in English or thus in Scottish, and that's probably a bit difficult as well.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while to get used to it. Once you got used to it, you can sort of like, if you've got to read it in the accent in your head. For a non-native English speaker, that must be even harder. Or maybe there's a Swedish translation where they translate it into like hillbilly Swedish or something like that. I mean, there's got to be an area that's got in Sweden that's got an accent that's as incomprehensible as Glaswegian Scottish or something like that.
Definitely, southern Sweden, skånska. They talk really really funny. But yeah, it's just this movie. It's I think a lot of these movies complained about them having tight budget. Even Your Name, that was really beautiful, and I think this one, Trainspotting, also had. Maybe all movies want a higher budget, of course, but they made a lot of it, I think, and I think the acting is pretty good, and the dialogue is like it's top notch. There's so many funny scenes that you can look back on, and of course, Ewan McGregor, Rent Boy, Mark Renton, he's really nihilistic. So we always talk about, like, there's this monologue at the start. I think it's like some old ad from England, from Scotland, like choose life instead of.
It's a parody of like health insurance ads and stuff like that. At the end, he changes his mind and he actually realizes that actually I like the health insurance people ad where they live life to the fullest, dental care, laundromat, washing machines, televisions,
mortgages,
corduroy sweat.
Yeah.
Some people say, "Oh, why isn't Ewan McGregor's character? Why isn't he one of the literally me characters?" And it's kind of because he changes his mind at the end. Most of the like literally me characters, like the guy from Drive or the Joker,
American Psycho,
they all stay the same throughout the movie. They never improve. They're always like evil people at the end of it, just as they were at the start. Whereas Ewan McGregor changes his mind and he's like, I'm going to be a normie now. So that's why people don't really look up to him as a literally me character as much as other media characters.
That's pretty interesting. We're probably going to talk about that more in the last movie as well. But there's like so much to untangle in this movie. If you want to talk about like the characters are really interesting and they're like unique. You have his drug friends and or like his addict friends and his non-addict friends, and one of his non-addict friends is this guy called Big B. That's just he's super aggressive and wants to start fights with people, but he's the one who doesn't do drugs, and he's like the worst of them all. He's like the most criminal. All of them are kind of criminals. They rob people.
Yeah, anything for a fix. Yeah.
And steal stuff just to get money for exactly anything for a fix. And it's really also interesting. This movie is just so interesting because I mean I never really knew anyone on with a heavy addiction. I've like gone to learn some friends after that, and it's really interesting the different types of lives people live. Like some people just live to plan for the next day and get the next fix, while others, choose life.
And I guess it's kind of like Your Name, where you get a glimpse into the life of some random person you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to the final movie then? Your favorite movie of all time?
My favorite movie of all time has got to be Whiplash from 2014.
Very nice.
I got recommended this movie by my ex-partner. I really had a hard time thinking I was gonna like this because it's about the guy playing drums.
Yeah, and jazz as well.
And jazz. And I've never been musically talented or gifted. I mean, I like playing some instruments and but I stuck more to art and video editing and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Never listened to much jazz, but man, this movie, I watched it once and it was like, oh, this is a pretty good movie. And then I watched it a second time some months later. I was like, wow, this is a really good movie. And I watched it a third time and I'm like, it doesn't stop being a really good movie.
Just gets better.
It just gets better. It's crazy. It's about these themes of wanting to be the very best at something, and also kind of abusive relationships, and what if abuse and
What's the border between being a trainer and an abuser?
yeah, and like what if that abuse gets results? Is it justified?
Because by the end of it, he does eventually become the ideal drummer guy, but at what cost? Because he was so close at the end to overcoming it and being a good drummer in spite of his abusive teacher, but then he decided to throw it all away and finally lean into it and accept the fact that yes, I was abused by my drum teacher, but I am now the best in the world.
You kind of get the sense that he's probably not gonna be the best in the world because he leaves his abusive teacher. Is kind of the reading that I got from it. He is in this great band, gets accepted. He plays really well, but he messes up for reasons he can't really account for. So it's really unfair. These bands are really competitive and really cutthroat. That then he realized that he was probably abused and he should sue Fletcher.
Yeah.
But then like at the end he like goes back to the abusive relationship. We get the sense that he has quitted playing drums. He's doing something else until he meets Fletcher again. That last scene, it's so rewarding. It feels so good watching it.
Both the main character and the antagonist win in a way because J.K. Simmons made his perfect drummer boy, and
yeah, he gets his Buddy Rich's Charlie Parker.
Yeah, and Miles Teller, Andrew, gets to be the best.
Yeah, in a way, but also there's like you can read in it in quite another way that Neiman Andrew, the student, he goes back to his abusive teacher despite everything that he has put him through. He goes back to him and he is still ready to be abused in a way. And in a way, Fletcher's ruthless and kind of immoral teaching style is in a way justified. It gave results at the very end. If that wouldn't have happened, he would probably have had a really different legacy. I hear from some people that he doesn't play the drums exactly what you hear, but he puts up a really good performance. He really plays the drums well. And then we talk about J.K. Simmons. He says another level of professional acting in this movie.
Yes.
It's like if you've seen him in Spider-Man or whatever, he's good. But in this movie, he's
10 times better. Yeah, this is him at his peak.
There's so many interesting things to untangle and to look at in this movie. I think like there's the dinner scene, for example, when Andrew comes home to his family. They're like, everyone's going around the table like, oh, how's it going in school for you guys? And Andrew's like, yeah, I got accepted I'm the lead drummer in the best band at the school, which is the best school in the country, which means that it's probably the best, drum position in the entire world if you're a student. And they're like, oh, that's good. That's good, kid. And then they're like, get up over the ears about his brother who's like made it to third division in like some obscure American football team instead.
He's reached the top of his game in a really niche thing that nobody really cares about. But to him, it's like the most important thing in the world. Jazz music, not very high on people's priority list. I think a lot more people care about college football, but to him, it's like the most important thing in the world, and he's willing to put himself through the grinder to get this accolade of the best jazz drummer in the world, as he says.
Exactly. And I feel like there can be some relatable things there, like people around you not really taking you or your profession seriously in a way, not getting support. Or, for example, like family not understanding what you're doing. Like for some time when I was doing YouTube, I really kind of wanted to try to do it as like a summer job or something. But my parents kind of encouraged me to do like some real jobs that I can put on my CV.
Yeah.
And in a way, I'm kind of happy about that because at that time I probably wouldn't have been able to sustain myself for very long just making MLG
From
no scope videos like I did back then. In a way, when something hit off or blow up, and people don't really see the implications of it, that in the way you see it, whether it's like justified or not, it can be a really daunting feeling or a sad feeling in a way.
How did you explain to your friends and family that you make like frog videos?
I mean, for a lot of people, I have some friends that are really, as grown up on the internet as me, so they can understand it. I've made friends because of the videos, because they're like, oh wow, is that you making those videos? It's very interesting. But if you talk to general people, they won't even say, oh, that's nice. They're not even at that level, He meets this girl where he has as soon as he has a little confidence, like he gets accepted into Fletcher's band, he asks this girl out that he has kind of met in the cinema, and that's and they kind of talk, and you realize that they're kind of different people, because Neiman has everything planned out to know exactly what he wants to do. He's in the best music school in the country, in the world, and he wants to play the drums. And this girl, she doesn't really know what she wants to do. She's like, says she doesn't really like it here. And that's maybe the more common college experience in my in my experience. And it's really interesting to see, like, later he realized that this is not going to work. But I mean, that's kind of what dating is. You talk to people and realize what they're all about.
Yeah, and then you realize you're actually not that interested. You just wanted to have sex with them.
Yeah, pretty much. I read some interesting trivia, like he worked on this while he worked on La La Land. So he like wrote this in the middle of it instead. It was part of like some short movie or something for some film festival. And I think I actually saw that one.
When I was in university, I was told by my lecturer that it was a proof of concept film to convince the studio to make it into a full film. And I think, I'm looking at it now, it was made in 2013, so a year before Whiplash came out. So this was probably the proof of concept film.
I think I saw that in like, do you remember getting those old like CDs that were just a bunch of trailers on them?
They usually put the trailers on the front part of the CD.
Yeah, this is not it. This is just like one extra thing you got with the movie, an extra disc that's just like, it's 4 trailers on it. That's all the CD is. Interesting. I read also that Chazelle, he was like in a car accident when filming this, but was determined to like make it through and see. He was like at the end of shooting, and that's pretty interesting because that happens in
just like in the movie where he gets hit by a car, and then he's so devoted into finishing the song. So, what would you say your TV box set that you would bring with you to the island? What would that be?
A series that I fell into like only a few years ago is Nathan For You, if you've seen that.
I was actually speaking about this in the pub like 2 hours ago. So.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I have a friend who was telling me about it.
Yeah, I just like watched maybe one short clip on Reddit, and then I fell on a rabbit hole on YouTube, and then I realized, oh, it's actually a real show, and I was just hooked. It's really funny. I think I've only seen it once, all the episodes through. So I would really love to watch it at least one more time.
I don't know if it's the same series, but I've seen something that Nathan Fielder did where he interviewed the Tall People Association of Canada or whatever.
Yeah, I think that was some of his earlier stuff.
Yeah, he's got a big like rig so that he can see the world as a tall person.
It's a bit of like the Borat-esque series where he just films people a little bit unknowing of what they're doing. He markets it as he is like a marketing agent in a way, a business improvement company. He tries to get businesses off the ground that are not doing so well with really weird ideas like, oh, you're running an ice cream shop. Why don't you make a poop flavored ice cream? That will get people interested in your store. There's so many good episodes, and it's like a series where I found myself laughing a lot, and I haven't really done that to a TV show in a long time, I feel like, or not to this extent at least.
What would you say your album was?
My album is probably even more difficult, that might be the one I've listened to the most, is also Food House self-titled album. I'm a bit of a zoomer, so this is hyperpop. You know, if
Of
you've
course.
heard like 100 gecs, it's kind of
Yes, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like them, but a bit even more cranked up, I would say.
Mm.
So it's definitely not. I feel like a lot of my music is not music that I can recommend to people. You know,
Yeah.
I grew up with Crazy Frog and
Yeah.
Skrillex, listening to that. So this is kind of a mix of those two, I'd say, in a way.
Yeah.
It's a duo consisting of Fraxium or Frax and Goopy.
Frax and Goopy.
Yeah, Frax and Goopy. And Goopy is actually the son, Spencer Hawk. He's the son of Tony Hawk, the famous
Oh my
skateboarder.
goodness.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Like this album has a lot of counterculture. It's like the prog rock of today in a way. I'm probably the most drawn to the production, maybe from Goopy. There are a lot of really goofy lyrics this album as well. I used to fantasize about being or kissing Skrillex. I need to get off Twitter because it gives me fucking mental illness.
Very relatable.
Very contemporary.